Hey everyone, today we are joined by a star of professional wrestling. He's been involved in the industry for over 20 years now, known for his time in various promotions, including WWE's Florida Championship Wrestling in NXT, TNA Wrestling, aka Impact Wrestling, aka TNA Wrestling again, the National Wrestling Alliance, and beyond. He's been known as Kenneth Cameron, Bram, and of course, Thom Latimer. Tom, sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ken. Hell of an intro. And 20 years, ugh, it's long. Yeah, it's a long time, mate.
That's one of those things where it's like a point of pride, but it also might be a bit of a gut punch, you know.
Yeah, it's been about 5 years.
Fantastic. But you've done so much. I'm so excited to talk with you. You've actually come up on the channel quite a few times, and people always have really positive things to say. Tim Storm, especially, he was gushing about you in the past, and
yeah, I love Tim. He's still got me beat on. I saw him 2 nights ago, and he's still got me beat on the tan. I'll never beat Tim. I've just come to that realization that he'll always be browner than me.
Hey, never give up. You never know. You might be able to pull it off.
So, maybe one day.
I want to get into the beginning of your career and everything like that. But before we do, I want to hit plugs. And then once we cover plugs, there's a specific thing I want to talk about because you're doing something really exciting. But first, where can people check you out?
Instagram, Thomas_Latimer_, Twitter, same thing, Thomas_Latimer_. And then obviously on the CW app now. And soon in St. Augustine, Florida, at Hatchet Pro Wrestling, the wrestling school. I'll be there several days a week. And then other than that, as of right now, I might be joining a brand called Millions, and you should be able to find me on the Millions homepage as well. But awesome. That is yet to be. Okay, so just Instagram, Twitter, and the wrestling school. That's why you'll see me. Oh, and the CW app.
We will have links in the description of every video, the clips, and the full interview with all of your, the Instagram, the Twitter, and everything. So people make sure to follow, make sure to show some support because he's nice enough to come onto the channel and talk about his career. So show that support back to him, please. Now, you talked about something so exciting, Hatchet Pro Wrestling. Now, this is a new wrestling school with yourself, John Davis, and WWE's Dexter Lumis, aka Sam Shaw. Can you please talk all about it, training in general? Because, again, we just talked about your experience in wrestling. The fact that you have so much is a great opportunity for people to learn from you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Yeah, it opens on the 23rd of this month. We're going to be doing, at least for now, 8-week courses. You come in, you get the full works for the 8 weeks, and then after that amount of time, if you want to stay on and continue and go further and advance, then you can, or you can go elsewhere like a lot of people do and go to other schools and other places and learn. But it's definitely for your beginner or your newbie or someone that's sort of relatively new to the business. And of course, we're going to change down the road when it comes to how it's going to be ran. This is how we're going to try it for a period of time, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we'll do something else. But you've got myself there, and I've been sort of involved in training and helping run wrestling schools for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. You got Sam, Dexter Lumis, obviously with WWE now. Say no more. And then John Davis, and John's a guy that's sort of been really big on the independents from Dragon Gate, Evolve, FIP, things like that. And so we think that we've got a winning formula when it comes to 3 guys that, in a roundabout way, bring something sort of different. We've all been trained and taught and learned the job differently. And we've all got, assets of, being in different places, different promotions, learn from different people. So we do think that we can be a good triple threat team when it comes to being able to teach the new generation about the job. And for me, anyway, it's something that I didn't realize that I would actually really enjoy. And I didn't think it would be something that I would even do, to be honest. But as of, spending the last sort of 5 years doing it, it's very rewarding. And also, I think that me coming, towards the back end of my career, I think that anyone that's been in the job for a long time and done some things, I think if you don't give back in whatever degree, it's a waste. All those lessons and things and trials and tribulations that I've gone through, they should be passed on. All the people that have spent all that time on me, I should be able to then give back and do that to the next generation. So, it's definitely exciting, and I'm looking forward to getting the ball rolling on the school. We're in, like I said, St. Augustine, Florida, which is just down the road. Should I say up there? I think it's down the road from Jacksonville, and I feel like it's a great place. It's pretty untapped. I don't think there's any other wrestling schools there. I don't think there's any real wrestling there, to be honest. So I'm excited to see how that landscape looks, down the line. We've got 2 rings in there too, something that I never had when I was breaking into the business. I would have walked over broken glass to have gotten a wrestling ring. I had to learn on mats on a concrete floor, but you learn quick when you're bumping on those things. 2 rings. It's a nice facility. It's going to be exciting. So, like you said, the description and the links and all that will be on there. But if you're in the St. Augustine, Jacksonville, or Florida area in general, and you want to come learn off the 3 of us, this is the place to go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And guys, check it out. We have a lot of, aspiring wrestlers or young wrestlers who check out the channel. So this is a great way for you to learn from people who, like you said, been there, have done that, and basically every level of professional wrestling. So
yeah, thanks, Cam.
Okay, so with that aside, let's get into the beginning of your career, since you kind of brought it up. But before we even get to the first time you learned about, getting in the ring, or not in the ring in that case, when did you first see wrestling? When did you become a fan? How did that click? Because my understanding is it came a little later in life for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, it did. I didn't have Sky Television. I didn't have. Sorry, my phone's going off here. I didn't have. Let me turn it off.
No problem.
I didn't have cable. So I had no idea what it was. I remember going to school one day and seeing kids butterfly suplexing their backpacks around and everything, and everyone was super excited about it. And I remember thinking, what on earth is going on? Who is this Stone Cold guy? And, I had no idea. And, I would borrow tapes and things like that for the kids. And I even found a WrestleMania 8 tape at my grandparents' house when I was a kid too, which had no reason to be in there at all. They hated wrestling. And they actually had a lot to do with me getting into the job in some weird way, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I would borrow tapes or stay over at, my parents' friend's place until 1 a.m. to watch Raw and things like that. And I think I remember getting my hands on the 1998 King of the Ring. And once I saw, the Undertaker and Foley match, I was instantly hooked. Then I couldn't believe that you could get tossed off a cage or do any of this crazy stuff and get paid for it. I was like, that is what I want to do. And then once the Hardy Boys came onto the scene, that's when I was completely sold. I was the biggest, and I still am, biggest Jeff Hardy fan out there. And so, yeah, that was that. This was being able to, especially in England back then, deciding that I wanted to be a professional wrestler was like saying that I was going to be an astronaut and walk on the moon, an impossible, daunting task. But it was something that it's the only thing that's ever gripped me enough. And it's the only thing I've ever really cared about, job wise, enough to, I don't know, it's just something about it. It just hooked me, and it's been something that I can't shake.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And wrestling is such a unique industry where, once you get into it, it's really hard to let it go, especially if you're heavily into it. You might kind of phase out here or there. Maybe you'll be, oh, I'm too cool, I'm a teenager, I want girls now. But then you always find yourself coming back. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, it definitely appears that way, because I had several moments in my life where it did go away, or other things were more important, or I had to go to college for 2 years to learn to be a chef and something to fall back on. And there's even a period when I was trying out, once I'd been wrestling for a couple of years, where I quit. I quit for about a year and, got a job as a security guard and thought that was going to be my life. And, Yeah, and there was definitely a part two where it did fall out of favor with me when I was a kid because, like you said, I found booze, drugs, girls, and all those other sorts of things. So yeah, it goes in and out, but I think that once it's got its tentacles on you, that's it. You're done.
One thing I wanted to ask about is obviously you've spent time on television. You spend a lot of time on the indies. The British indies will definitely talk more about how it's evolved later. But at that period, did you know they existed? When did you find out they existed? Because we talked to Dave Mastiff recently, and
Yeah.
he talked
Okay.
about the classic tribute shows, which, there's always a debate among, especially people who aren't from the UK, which is funny enough, and where there's debates like, were they trying to fool people? Were they just trying to be like, a tribute band? And, I'm curious if you were aware of them at the time, or if you've heard much, or even if you went to one.
Well, so when I was a kid, I remember walking, into town, and there's a newsagent's, it's a shop that sells newspapers, and they had a poster in the wall, and it was, and I ended up, obviously wrestling and being friends with all these guys years down the line. Well, there was a fake Matt Hardy, a fake Undertaker, fake Kane, and one of my friends, Dave, who actually was the fake Undertaker for the whole stint. I've been to his house. The guy lives in a mansion, right, from being the fake Undertaker.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I mean, they did amazing. And they got loads of cease and desist letters and everything like that. But no, it was definitely, it would be, as a kid, I obviously thought, oh, this is the real deal, right? And they obviously did work on that basis when it came to the children.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as adults, if you were going, you'd know. But all the kids were just as excited. I mean, as far as they thought it was the real Undertaker, so there definitely was a level of that. And even when I broke in, once I finally started wrestling on, bigger and better shows, that's who I sort of started with, more or less, was a promoter that did a lot of the tribute shows. That every night there'd be a Sergeant Slaughter versus Undertaker. So, and then I would also pretend to be American myself. I'd come out waving an American flag, and everyone would boo me and hate me because I was the horrible American, even though I'm English, but they didn't know. I just didn't talk. So
and now you live in the United States. It's funny how that works.
I'm American as apple pie. I'm telling you, just the voice. That's it. That's the only English thing left in me. But yeah, and a lot of these shows too. I mean, they drew massive. I mean, when I was breaking in, I was in front of 1,200-1,300 people every night. Which was kind of unheard of, even in today's times. So yeah, I did all those tribute shows, and but it was one of those things that as much as I was wrestling and as much as I was in front of a lot of people, it did help get your name out there. No one knew you existed. It's kind of its own separate entity. It's not like today where there's these indies that will pop up and people know the wrestlers, or know the promotion, or there's a cult following or anything like that. It was very much a family friendly show, and full of kids. And like I said, besides getting reps, it didn't do anything to sort of build your stock in the job.
Did you find, maybe with the benefit of hindsight, that doing something like that kind of helped with breaking you out of your shell? Because when you're going out there as Thom Latimer, yes, it's a character, but it's also you, right, to an extent. But when you're going flag waving American, you can just be completely different to yourself. Did you find that a little easier for you to get used to the business?
I mean, that's a good point, and I want to say yes. It definitely helped. All that kind of stuff did, to be able to get out of your shell, because those wrestling shows too weren't like I said how they would be now, which is more towards television wrestling and current promos and all that kind of stuff. It was very much family friendly, and you were more or less a cheerleader in the ring, rather than a wrestler. It'd be okay to break out of character, and break kayfabe, and stop selling, to be able to get all the kids behind you. You know what I mean? Like, really, it was more like if you were to mix theater with professional wrestling. rather than it being professional wrestling. But it definitely did help get me out of my shell. And I needed those reps, and I needed to be around a lot of those guys, especially once I got into Brian Dixon's shows, All Star Wrestling, which a lot of guys did. You know, Daniel Bryan. He would do tours with him, and Nick Aldis started with him. Rampage Brown started with a lot of the guys did, and I was one of those guys too. And he had, back in the day, he still had sort of the last territory, you would sort of call it, in the UK, where you could wrestle 6-7 days a week for him. We would wrestle on the a thing called camp shows. Basically, it was like a place that holiday makers go because they can't afford or they don't have time to be able to go abroad. So it's like a big sort of like park where people stay and people will spend the weekend there or have a whole week there. And there's, things for the kids to do and all that. And so we would wrestle on all these shows, as well as the sort of shows in the local town hall and things like that. So we got really lucky back then, because, like I said, as a young kid, getting to go on the road with Brian Dixon's All Star Wrestling, I got to wrestle every day. And when you're a kid living in your parents' house, you don't need much money to live on. So getting paid £35 a day for me, was great, because I could spend that money on booze and going to.
Now, were these the same as the Butland shows?
Yes, it's
okay,
the same.
Just making sure.
Butland's, yeah.
Because you hear a lot about that. You talked about Bryan Danielson. I think Colt Cabana used to talk about it a lot too, where he learned so much from it. But even like in the 90s, like Chris Jericho's book, he talks about, going overseas and working these kind of shows. And it's where he really started to hone himself, because you're working sometimes the same people, sometimes completely different people, but constantly. And it's not common for indie wrestling, weekends, that's normally when you end up working. So right. I know we're skipping ahead on the timeline a little bit, but could you talk about how the process of wrestling, constantly every day, and what changes that might have required or didn't require, depending on what the crowd was like?
You pretty much knew what you were going to get. You also knew, working the Butland shows with Brian was interested in selling his foam fingers and his wrestling merch. That's how extra cash. I mean, he was a great promoter. I mean, one of the best. But you could have. He would never watch He would never watch the matches. But you go up to him after, especially as a kid, because you want to impress him, right? You want to make sure that you stay working for him. And I'd be like, "Hey, Brian, how was it?" And depending on how much merchandise he'd sold at the time, it was either a good or a bad match. So basically, and what I came to sort of figure out was, if Brian sold a bunch of foam fingers and a bunch of action figures, you had a good match, which to me went, well, hang on, if they're all pissing off to go buy stuff, obviously my matches are shits, right? But he thought it was great because he was making extra money. So, you couldn't rely on Brian to, but he obviously liked his colorful characters and this and that, because he knew that where the kids go, the money is, right? Because the kids drag the parents to buy all the stuff and do this and do that. So, yeah, no, it's kind of funny, but no, I mean it was a great time, and it's just a shame that there's nothing like that left anymore.
Absolutely. It's such a great learning experience, and maybe one day something like that can pop up again, but who knows? I want to go back to you talking about your favorites. You mentioned Jeff Hardy specifically, which is pretty cool, because obviously you ended up working in the same company as Jeff Hardy later on. Could you talk about just who were your influences of your fandom back then, beyond, including Jeff Hardy, but beyond Jeff Hardy too?
So it's kind of weird. Obviously, later on down the line, when I learned the job and learned what a good wrestler is, or a good hand, whatever, right? It sort of changed and evolved. When I was a kid, I was and still am, huge Shawn Michaels fan. And then same with Jeff and the Hardy Boys in general. Later on, then it would become Dynamite Kid and people like that. And then obviously further down the line, then it'd be guys like Triple H, and I'm trying to think. But I again, like the other day, I put on the 1986 NWA Crockett Cup, and one of the first matches was Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers versus Steve Kern and his tag partner. Sorry, I can't remember his name. And you know, it was one of the sort of beginning matches of the Crockett Cup. And there's no commentary, and it is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's very rare that I watch wrestling now or can watch wrestling where I forget I'm a wrestler, and instead of analyzing it and looking for bits, I remember thinking, "Oh, blooming heck, I'm watching this as a fan, like watching it as a fan again." And I was like, but if you'd have shown me that as a kid, I would have thought it was a shit, right? But now, as a worker myself, watching that 1980, and I was born then, 1986, but watching that, I was like, this is magic. What these guys are doing looks real. The emotion, the storytelling, the selling. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I instantly text Bobby Fulton, because I love Bobby, and I text Bobby and I said, Bobby, I just watched that match. It is unbelievable. I said, why do you think it's gone so far away from what that was? And he was like, Tom, when back in the day when we were in the job, you know, we made sure that we went in with a mentality, this is real. We can't, and they didn't kick the fuck out. Sorry, I swear. They didn't, you know, they didn't beat each other up to death either. They're working. They're looking after each other, but you believe, because that's the art of pro wrestling. The art of pro wrestling is looking like you're murdering someone and you're not touching them, right? That's the art. There's no art in beating someone up for real. And that's the mindset that they went in there with. They're going to look after each other, but they're going to make sure that not for 1 second does anyone think that this job's bent, that this job's fake, right? And I think there's probably a level of that that's missing now. Anyway, I've gone on a tangent, but, you know, like I said, it changed and evolved as I changed and evolved. Because I loved the, you know, like you say, Shawn Michaels, Jeff Hardy, for the way that they would sell. Like, I would watch those guys. Even as a kid, I would love watching Jeff Hardy or Shawn get beaten up. Like, I loved the way that they'd fly around and their hair would whip back. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I wasn't looking at the moves they did. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, I was impressed with it all and thought it was great. But I was watching how they sold, even when I was a kid. Like, I wanted to emulate the way that they were getting beaten up. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely sort of hang my hat on Jeff Hardy and Shawn Michaels as being my guys when I was a kid, and like they still are today. I just obviously I'll watch everything now, and then when I see something like that, you know, 1986 NWA event, I go, wow, job couldn't be any more different now. But watching that, I'm like, that is where we need to go back to. That is pro wrestling.
What's interesting to me is, you know, it seems like a lot of your favorites were actually smaller guys, or, you know, at the time, smaller guys. Do you look, people say small guys at Shawn Michaels and he's like 6'1" or something, you know, but in today's wrestling, he'd be almost a giant. But, you know, it's interesting because you're a big guy, right? You know, you're tall, you're jacked. So it's interesting to see that, you know, the people you were gravitating towards were the smaller ones. Was it because you were a kid and you could relate more to the size? Like, do you know what it was besides just their selling?
I don't know. I also instantly then grew out my hair too, and I was like, I want to be just like them. But I mean, even Jeff's way bigger than you think. It's quite funny how many people are quite deceiving. Like Billy Gunn today, Billy is a monster, right? But if you saw Billy Gunn back in the day when everyone was big, he looks like average.
Yeah.
And it's insane. If you see Billy, you're like, wow, you are massive. And so it is kind of funny. Even when I got to developmental, when I walked in, then I remember thinking, "Oh boy!" Like me, Rampage Brown, a few of those others, we were tiny. We were midgets compared to everybody else there, and that was 2010. So you know, it's obviously changed a lot since then. But you know, I don't know. I honestly, as far as their size, I knew that they were different to the other guys. But their bodies weren't really something that it obviously stood out to me, but it wasn't something that I really put much thought into, which is kind of weird because obviously then when I became a pro wrestler myself, I thought, oh, I need to get in the gym and I need to look like a pro wrestler. You know, none of those guys didn't, but you know, I sort of, because if I, you know, you'd have thought that if I was Jeff Hardy, Shawn Michaels fan, I might not have sort of gone that route, but you know, I did. I don't know. I also thought, well, if you know, you've got to be able to tick a bunch of boxes. If you can have the look, the body, you know, the charisma, you can talk, you can wrestle, you know, you got to be able to tick a few boxes. So I thought, well, at least I can try and tick them, you know. But it is funny how times have changed, and I would be one of the bigger guys now, considering that even in 2010 I was, you know, a tiny little man. You know.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, I love asking this, and you can take it from two different perspectives, but were there wrestlers who you couldn't stand as a kid? Now, it could either be a compliment because they're such good heels that they just drove you crazy, or if you want to talk about, like, maybe you just didn't think they were good or whatever, but generally it's more the compliment.
I've got a perfect example, and I love him, and he is unbelievable. And that's Jeff Jarrett. Like, I remember watching Jeff, and you know, for me, it'd have like go away heat, but as a kid, right? But because, you know, for whatever reason, now everything that Jeff does is gold. I know why he's doing it, and like, and you know, he's a guy that can reinvent himself, and he ends up popping up on every show. Like, Jeff is amazing. Like, Jeff is like a guy that can do anything in pro wrestling. He's unbelievable, and he's a hell of a talent. He's just unbelievable. And so Jeff is definitely one of those guys. As a kid, I didn't like, and then when I got into the job and started understanding how it worked, I was like, wow, I love Jeff. You know what I mean? It's very funny how that completely changes once you sort of get into the job.
I think maybe also it just comes a different appreciation of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're a fan, you like the flash, you like the, you know, maybe not the moves, but maybe the moves, but, you know, you like the characters, you like, but then you can start paying attention to timing and, you know, what they're doing to make other people look good. And suddenly that matters.
Exactly. That's totally right. As a kid, you don't really know anything. You go, I don't like this guy. Plus, I'm English too, so I don't really understand the gimmick. A guy with a guitar, and then later on down the line, I'm like, just one of the best in the world, you know.
Super cool, super cool. So my next question is kind of the magic one, because you kind of hinted towards it before, but what was your in for wrestling? And before you even get to that, when did you know you wanted to be a wrestler? Was it back then as a fan, or?
Yeah, I mean, I knew. I don't know. There's something deep down inside of me that knew that that's what I was going to do. I didn't know how at all, because, like I said, you know, wanting to be a pro wrestler, especially back then, being some idiot kid from the Chesterfield, UK. You know, it was an impossible task to even try and get my head around. Especially back then. It's not like now there's internet and there's wrestling and this and that. It was a no man's land. So, you know, but deep down inside, I just knew that is what somehow I was gonna do it. And you have to really have that mindset of you can't give up. The second you give up, I mean, I know, and I've said this, you know, on a few things. Yeah, I know lots of guys that it was only recently that they all got hired by WWE, where it was the NXT UK stuff or whatever, right? It just takes time. It's luck, it's timing, it's who you know, it's things like that. And some of these guys have been wrestling as long as I have, and they've only just got the break now. So, you know, it's kind of just one of those things. Sorry, Ken, I forgot the start of that question.
No problem. It was basically, what was your in? How did you get involved in wrestling?
And so I'd started. I'd somehow. It's kind of weird, but so it started off with my grandma again, who that WrestleMania tape was there and had no reason to be there. There's no reason why that tape should have been in the house. It was like, you know, a recorded one. She ended up saying there's a kid that used to go to school with this wrestling now, and I thought that he was with. I didn't know independence existed. I had no clue other than WWF. And so when she told me that, I was like, oh, wow, this kid that's only a year older than me is wrestling for WWE. Wow. Anyway, obviously find out that wasn't the case. And that it was like, you know, doing some independence. And I bumped into him New Year's Eve when I was out drinking as a kid. And we got talking. And next thing you know, every time they'd do a wrestling show, I'd go and I'd referee. And then eventually they'd sort of let me just become a wrestler without any training, whatever. It was, you know, it was definitely a place that was like, I wouldn't say it was there was no one in the crowd but friends and family. Put it
Mhm.
that way. It was a great way for me to sort of break in and sort of figure it out. And then once I moved to Harrogate when I was about 17, I ended up finding Jeff Kay and Drew McDonald's school in Leeds, and it was just like in a dirty gym in the middle of nowhere, and it was just mats on the floor. And somehow I'd found this wrestling school, and I walked into thinking, "Oh, I'm already a pro wrestler," even though I never had any training. And watched those guys roll around, and I was blown away. Like all the British style stuff, because Jeff Kay and Drew McDonald, who ran that school, were World of Sport veterans. And so I had no idea of that style of wrestling too. I had no idea there was a thing called World of Sport before, completely clueless. And so I remember seeing those guys wrestling and just being absolutely blown away, like, oh wow, I know nothing. And somehow Jeff was really close friends with Dave Finlay, with Fit Finlay. So somehow I'd managed to find this school in the middle of nowhere that no one knew about, where the guy the old man that runs it, he's close with Finlay. So a lot of these guys, once I got to meet a few. There's only a few of us there. They were all going to WWE tryouts already. Like they were rolling around in front of Triple H at the ages of like 14 and 15. And so I was kind of like, wow, what are the odds that I managed to find this wrestling school in the middle of nowhere that has links to WWE? And so that was sort of like how the WWE thing sort of started taking hold. Every time they would come to town, Jeff would take me and a few of the other boys there, and we'd either go hang out or we'd get a chance to sort of wrestle around in front of people and everything like that. But obviously, we're young, we're skinny, we're just punk kids that, we keep thinking, oh, maybe we're going to get signed and everything. And, it was many, many, many years before that happened. But it was kind of a crazy way that, I managed to, get in front of the right people. Because otherwise, had I not have gone to that school, I definitely, nothing would have happened for me, I don't think.
Wow, that's crazy. It's like you said, it's a crazy chance, and yeah,
Right.
that's why I
Is there,
love this channel. Like people have
is,
such unique stories.
you've got to wonder life. It's very strange. You've got to always. I'm always like, is it a coincidence, or is this? You know what I mean? Sometimes things are just too strange. For example, like I remember being a kid, and another thing that happened at my grandma's, but she had like Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure on recorded off TV too. Me and my brother would watch that all the time. And then because of the wrestling job, I ended up meeting Pee Wee Herman when he came to developmental one time.
Oh
And then
wow,
and just before he died, the Christmas before, he sent me a Christmas card. I'm like, how biz life's weird, you know what I mean? Like it's is there any coincidences? Well, I don't know. It's very strange.
since you brought it up, can you talk a little bit more about that? It's just because it's such a wild. Again, wrestling is so wacky, and I love it. But like, just him showing up there, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
he's a wrestling fan, so he ended up just showing up there one day and sort of took a picture with him, and yeah, it was cool. Just very strange though too, because like I said, it's this bizarre tape that I would sometimes watch at my grandma's house, and then years later, I meet him, and then years later he tracks me down and ends up sending me, because he wants to be able to send me a Christmas card, so I've got that on the fridge.
It's such a wild thing. Like, what an experience! Like,
Yeah, there's lots of things like that happen in the wrestling. It's very bizarre, but very cool too.
and that's the funny thing about wrestling is like some people kind of forget how big it can be. You know what I mean? And like some of the biggest names and of any walk of life are wrestling fans, and it's crazy to
Mm.
think about that. You talked about refereeing. That's so interesting to me because you did. It's not like you were trained to referee either, but you were doing it. Did that help your appreciation? Because I feel like I talked to like Johnny Yuma a lot, and the conversation is often because he helps book, he helps produce, he's wrestled, he kind of has an appreciation for every role because he's done every role. Did you have more of an appreciation for refereeing and referees because you did it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a tough job, especially to be a good ref. I've got a lot of friends that are refs, and they I mean, they're a guy that can really make or break your match. I mean, as much as they need to be the invisible person there in the ring, they're also one of the most important things too, to be able to relay messages, tell you how much time you've got left, or that they'll be getting talked to on their headsets, and they might need to relay a message to you, or they need to act a certain way. Let's say it's a big false finish, and you need that referee to have a sense of urgency and excitement and drama too, like he's helping paint the picture. So but for me, I was just very, very scared and just terrified, because I hadn't been taught anything. I didn't know where to stand, what to do, how to move, when to count. So
Yeah.
I bodged most of the times that I would do it, but they didn't care. But yeah, no, it was definitely a sort of something that was scary and pretty daunting for me. But I did think that it did help to some degree. Me further down the line, and also appreciate what they do. But I'm with them all the time now, and I appreciate. And when you get a good ref, it's definitely someone that you want to keep around. If I do indie shows and I happen to have a good ref, I'm always, oh, thank goodness it's you, because it's going to go well.
So refereeing, training, have you dabbled in anything else behind the scenes, throughout your long career? Like even things like ring crew. I'm guessing early on you probably had to help a lot with ring crew and stuff.
So when I got to developmental, I did a lot of stuff with the camera guys. Like, we didn't wrestle for a long time, but we'd have to do security, or sort of, kind of paying your dues almost. And so I ended up sort of, I forget what it's called now, cable running behind the camera guy, FCW, like for the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. Destroyed my knees, because obviously you got to spend hours bent over, right, sort of squatting. So it wasn't good for my knees, that. But no, I did a little bit of that, and then besides sort of the training at the wrestling school that I've been, wrestling schools that I've been doing the last 5 years, that's pretty much it. Now down the line, I'd get into agenting and things like that. But for me at the moment, I like to be able to put all my time and thought into, and I don't mind if I'm asked, hey, can you agent this or help? Can you help put this together for someone? I'll certainly do it. But I just feel like it's a bit of a conflict of interest to, be wrestling and then be doing another sort of job. I'd like to be able to put all my time and energy into that. And then if I was going to agent or coach or do whatever else at these wrestling shows, then I would just want to do that solely, so I could concentrate on that job. So it's something that I know that when I stop wrestling, that's something that I'll do, or at least I'll sort of venture into that side of the business when I can't bump anymore.
In regards to Hatchet Pro, do you see a time where maybe you guys start running shows, with the students? Is that something you would want to do? Like, because I know promoting could be unbelievably stressful and miserable, but is that something you would like to get into?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like when it comes to running a wrestling school, once they're at the level to be able to perform in front of people, it's mandatory that they do, especially if you can have it so you can control it a little bit more. Meaning, if you were just to give them, a certain amount of time training and then let them run off into the big wide world, yeah, they're going to learn. But there's going to be a lot of errors that can be avoided if you're running your own shows yourself, and there are places where it's not going to be that big of a deal if something doesn't go right, or they're going to be working people that they're familiar with. They won't wrestle some other random person and get hurt. You can control it a little bit more, and then eventually you have to let them go and spread their wings and do their thing. But as far as running wrestling shows with Hatchet, I think it's like I said, we've got to get to that point, but it's almost a mandatory thing to do. And also, some of these shows as well can be really, really cool and kick ass. A lot of these student shows and things like that helps them get out into the community, helps us get out into the community too. And so I definitely think it's something that once we have enough guys that we feel it's safe to be able to put them out there, that's definitely something that we want to be able to do. Yeah, it'd be great to be able to get that ball rolling. And also, even with the NWA too, you know, Billy's getting back into doing the territory thing too. So there's no reason why down the line it couldn't be a feeder system for him, or you know, or another territory for him to run. And then also it's good for them as well, because obviously Sam Shaw, Dexter Lumis, he obviously has his connections with WWE. I have my connections with NWA. John has his connections to, you know, FIP, Evolve, all those sorts of things. So, you know, it's also a good place for you to go, because, you know, there's a chance that you can get trained. And if we, you know, we're obviously going to train you and know you, and if we feel like you're ready, there's no reason why it can't be an easy way to sort of, you know, go to the next big place.
It's also like, it could be great to transition people from fans into getting involved in business, because, you know, if a kid starts going to these shows, now it's like, okay, you guys can start promoting your school, and it's like, oh, so this is how I get involved. So, you know what I mean? It was so much harder for you, you know.
Oh, totally. But I think as well, like, it's also them being able to promote it, and them, you know, like I did. I mean, I even did that when I got to developmental. You know, every weekend, instead of having the time off, we'd go to the next town, and we'd paper the town, and we'd go and promote it, and we'd do things like that. So it's another part of the business that is good to learn. And if you've got, and also there's an incentive there for the kids that you've got, to the students, to go out there and promote it, and because the more they promote it and the more they're advertising, the more people are going to come and watch them. So it's also in their best interest to, you know, get out there, promote it, help it, and watch it grow. But there's a lot of places that I know that do student shows, and some of those shows are better than their main shows.
Yeah.
Definitely hoping that that's something that down the line we can get to. And, you know, we've got 2 rings at the facility. And so one of them is more of a training ring. The second one is, you know, ones that, you know, not big, nice one that can be used on shows and things like that. So, yeah, I definitely want to go down that road once we're in the position to do so.
Super cool. In regards to your first matches, you know, you talked about how you kind of had them without any training. Could you talk about, if you remember, your first match there, and then your first match once you had training, and if there was a difference, like, for you mentally and physically? Because what's interesting is, normally I can find people's early matches, even if not like their exact first one, there's information. For you, there's really nothing until a WWE dark match or a heat match. So I'm really curious about what you did in the very beginning.
Yeah, I actually have that tape at my mum's house somewhere. It's from 2002, and it's me wrestling a friend of mine. He was called Crusher. He wrestled as Sam Hain, and he was my friend, but also sort of quote unquote my coach. He would sometimes take me to the park or somewhere like that, and he'd show me how to lock up or put on a backhammer and things like that. But other than that, that was pretty much it. But he trusted me, even though I had no training, to wrestle him. So he was actually my first match ever. I'll have to dig it out on tape somewhere. And I'm just dressed like a wannabe Jeff Hardy, you know. So I'll have to dig that out somewhere and find it. But yeah, he was my first match in 2002, and then to be honest, even when it came to that match on Heat, I still was so green. I'd only just gone to Jeff K and Drew McDonald's school for a couple of months before that happened.
Oh wow!
So out there, I had no idea what was going on or what I should do, and I was just again just faking it and just pretending like I knew what I was doing. And to be honest, it's sort of the last 10 years is kind of when it clicked. But the thing is you never stop learning. Every time I still get nervous, I still, you know, think I'm going to mess up, I still worry about things. That never really goes away, which is a good thing, right? But you never stop learning. So it's kind of like, would I say now that I'd say now that obviously I'm a lot more secure in what I do and who I am. And also it's at the point where I don't think about it anymore, meaning it's just a natural instinct to do what I do. Like I might even when I wrestled a couple of nights ago for the NWA TV taping, when I wrestled, you know, I'd obviously gone through what I was going to do with the guy. But even then, when I'm out there, when I get back, I don't necessarily think about actually doing anything. Okay, at this point I need to do this, or at this point I'll turn and do that. It's just all automatic now, which is kind of cool because it kind of takes the worry and the stress off it a little bit. You know, it's just kind of something. Whereas before, I'd go into the wrestling match and I'd be thinking about the next thing, or okay, I need to do this here and this and that, and that completely takes you out of it. But I do think it takes a long time to get to that point where you just I don't think about anything. I just do.
Which then allows you to be more in the moment and, you know, react and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's a lot of other things that you worry about or think about. You really don't need to. It will be what it'll be. And so, you know, I just said sort of the last 10 years that sort of clicked. But I don't really think there's ever a point where I'm like, I fully understand and know what I'm doing. I've got this in the bag. So there's not really a point where I've ever had that moment of going, oh, yep, I know everything. I'm good. I'm ready. You know, I'm still learning now, and I've been doing it, you know, 20 something years.
Do you think you'll ever have that moment, or do you think it's one of those things where you should always want to keep learning and always be able to keep learning? Because wrestling, it changes, it evolves, and it's, you know, it's performance, but there's psychology. There's so much that goes into it.
I think that anyone says that they've got it down to a science and they know what they're doing is lying. Mm-hmm. I'm still faking it. You know what I'm doing. But there's definitely guys I'll talk to, and I do wish that I had their mindset for the business. Guys like Ricky Morton, like you know, these guys are just on a different level to what we are and what we can be. Due to the way that the business has changed, the fact that there's less wrestling shows, the fact that people don't think the same way as they used to. And so I do think that, look, you know, you could go out there, Ricky Morton, for an hour, do an hour Broadway and not call anything in the back. And Ricky will get you through it, right? That's something that's completely, more or less completely gone now. I'd struggle to be able to do it too. I mean, it would be okay, but it wouldn't be anything more than a basic sort of thing. Because gone are the days of being able to go out there and do it on the fly. And, you know, like I said, he could get me through it and I could just listen to him. Even I wrestled Bubba Ray, you know, a couple of months back or a year back, whenever it was, for NWA. And even with him, we didn't really call about pretty much anything. He just listened to me. I went, yes, sir. Because that's a night off for me. I don't have to worry about anything. I'll just listen to. So I kind of like that too, because sometimes the pressure's off and all I've got to do is listen to someone that knows the job better than me.
Do you think stuff like that's really possible on a major, you know, on television? Well, probably not on television. No. You don't have time cues, but just like the way wrestling's kind of changed, like it's so intricate now and there's so much athleticism involved. Yeah. And it's like, there's so much, to me, from the outside looking in, I can't imagine, you know, Ricochet's, he's an amazing athlete and amazing performer. The stuff he does is so complex. I can't imagine just being like, okay, let's go out and wing it, because you kind of need to know for safety reasons, you know, of what's going on, because the timing has to be just right.
Yeah, I think like you said, the business has changed so much. I mean, if you go back and watch some of the older stuff, whatever spot they might do, you know, some sort of drop down tackle, the guy, you know, the crowd would go mad for it, you know, just off the tackle. The guy would roll out, you know, the baby face would celebrate. They'd come back. You know, it was all, you know, I wouldn't say it was simple, but it definitely wasn't as intricate, or I need you here at this very point because I'm going to put you in this. You know, there's a lot more of that now, whereas before, back in the day, as long as the people were going mad, you know, it didn't really matter. And all simple is best a lot of the time. But I think that there's also, when it comes to TV wrestling, now I think that for, you know, 10 minutes I could go out and, you know, have a pretty good, you know, a pretty good basic sort of match with, say, like a Rampage Brown or somebody like that that's been in the job, you know, as long as I have. But it wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be a 5-star classic with a bunch of, you know, crazy stuff in there. It would have to be, you know, 101 storytelling, which would be fine. But like I said, it wouldn't be to the expectations that people would expect now. And then when it comes to TV as well, another reason why it's so sort of micromanaged is just because of the the cameramen. They need to be able to know where to be and what shot to get and this and that. So yeah, I feel like it was just to be like a family friendly show where just a bunch of kids, and it didn't really matter if you know, if you're more of a cheerleader or whatever, you could probably get away with it. But yeah, 99.9% of the days now, yeah, you can't.
You've been a fantastic guest. Just a few more questions before we start wrapping up to get you on out of here. Like, as you can tell, we're at like 2005, so you can tell why I told you ahead of time.
Yeah.
I have to talk to people more than once to get through their careers. But I do want to get to some NWA talk before we get out. But first, I do want to talk about that Heat match because I do think it's really interesting. Just for people listening. You worked a match at WWE Heat in November 2005. You teamed up with Chris Chaos. You were known as Brandon T at the time, and you wrestled Snitsky and Tyson Tomko. This was when Heat was no longer on TV, I believe. I think it was just streaming online, but it was still by far, I'm sure, the biggest opportunity you had. And again, I'm sure it was just an enhancement match, but can you talk about how the opportunity came about and just that day in general and working with them?
Well, I actually had it on DVD somewhere at my mum's house, and it's gone missing. So I'm a bit heartbroken about it because I'd love to be able to watch it. I'm just a pasty, skinny, flabby, white kid out there not knowing what I'm doing. But I actually managed to record it off TV because it did air in the UK. I don't know about over here at that point, but man, it was it again. It was like. I don't know. I was just kind of going with the flow. And again, Jeff was the reason why we got to go. And yeah, they just said, "Oh, it's one of those things that I can't really remember." It was probably kind of traumatic in a long time. But I do remember the main thing that I remember is there's two things. I'd stopped watching wrestling at that point, right? So I remember Finley bringing me and Chris up to Snitsky and Tomko, who I later on became pals with, and they're great guys. But obviously at the time, they have no idea that we're just some punk kids, you know what I mean? And they're guys that are trying to, get over. And I remember thinking, the first thing I thought was, I have no idea who these two people are, because obviously I had no idea who they were. And then, and the second one was Tomko gives me a big boot, and I remember taking the big boot, and he absolutely murders me with it. Right? I mean, I don't feel a thing, but I mean, he murders me. And I remember just hearing 12,000 people go, oh. And I remember thinking, oh wow, that's cool. And then I remember looking behind me and seeing the WWE logo on the turnbuckle and being like, holy crap! Like I'm here. Like obviously signed or anything like that. But I remember, I was 18 and I remember thinking, wow, like, I can't believe that this is turning into a reality. You know what I mean? Like, it's so weird. It's like, I knew I was going to be a pro wrestler. I knew I was going to, whatever making it means, but, get signed by WWE and do those things. But I just couldn't, I was just like, I knew it right deep down inside in my soul, but that's what was going to happen. But it was just like, oh wow, this is actually a thing. This might actually turn into something, Because again, it was as foreign and as alien as walking on the moon to me, being in a WWF ring, and here I am getting my head taken off on a TV taping in a WWF ring with WWF wrestlers at a WWF show.
What's so cool about that is a lot of times I've noticed when interviewing guys is when you're in wrestling, it can be really hard to sit back and smell the roses, right? Because you're goal oriented, and that's why people are so successful, is because they're always striving for the next thing. And sometimes that can breed bitterness, right? Because if you don't hit that next plateau and you always want a bigger thing and then you don't get it, it can cause you to get a little bitter, maybe jaded. And it's plus if there's a big difference between being a fan of something and then once you start doing it, your passion is going to change. It might still be there, but it's different. But it's good that you were able to recognize, like, this is an amazing thing I'm doing, because a lot of people can't.
I mean, that's an amazing point that you made there, Ken, because it's something that I have to do a lot, especially when you consider my career and the amount of times that a company, whether it's WWE, TNA, whatever, right, Pro Wrestling Noah, they've given me a ball and I've gone, I don't want it, and I've messed up opportunities. And I look back on my career and there's so much that I regret. I mean, I do. And so especially with me and the way that my career has sort of gone, I definitely have to do that a lot. Well, not a lot, but I'll always think, okay, what would the 12-year-old Thom Latimer think about this? Like, I think he'd be pretty blown away and impressed and proud. You've wrestled here, you've gone to these countries, you live in the States, you've wrestled for these promotions and everything. Yeah, it didn't go the right way that you expected it or wanted it to, because you weren't mentally capable at the time. Like, it's taken me a long time to grow up. But I do think I do sometimes look at it from the outside looking in, because, and you've got to do that. And, I was even talking to Sam Shaw Dex the other day about it. And, it'll be the same thing. We'll sometimes have to stop ourselves and just go, think about it. What would the 12-year-old you think? I've got Sam's action figure in my bedroom, right?
It's wild.
You know what I mean? And so it's kind of one of those things that, for me, I'm just like, it's amazing. It's like, yeah, and of course, probably when it happened for him, it's like, oh, that's cool, and moving on to the next thing. Where it's just like, what would 12-year-old Sam think to that action figure? He'd be pretty blown away by it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that he's not, over the moon and thankful for it, but like you say, it is amazing how little stock you put into it because of the process and how long things take, and getting older and more jaded and closed-minded and bitter, you do look at things maybe not how you should. So it's a very good point, and that's something that I'll generally do too, is always look at the glass half full instead of half empty. And and you do have to sort of take a step back sometimes and just appreciate things, because it's very easy to not, or like you said, be goal driven and not give it enough time. And so that's definitely something that I'll do, is some, I forget the word, introspective,
yeah.
Moments where I can go, you know what, actually it's okay, and you did do these things, and now you're on a path where you've got clean and sober, happily married, things with this company is going well. You'll at least be able to sort of leave the back end of your career the way it should have been the whole time, and at least be proud of the back end of body of work that you've done, and then I can look back on that and I can be proud of it.
It's an amazing way to look at it. Now, I want to skip ahead almost 20 years from where we last left off. And I'm sure if I'm fortunate enough to talk to you again on the channel, hopefully I am, we'll dive way more into the NWA. But let's talk a little bit about the NWA.
That's good. Yeah, let's do it.
So the NWA has gone through a lot of changes, obviously, and you were really part of the major direction of the company as soon as the Lightning One era took off, basically, from NWA Power, working with Nick Aldis and everything. Then obviously there was the pandemic, and that really shifted so much in wrestling. And again, that's another subject we can explore in the future. 2024, the NWA, the CW. Can you talk about what opportunities there are there, what you think of the company now, and just your overall perspective on, Thom Latimer and the NWA?
So, I had a previous relationship with Billy when he was in Impact, and obviously, Nick Aldis being, my best friend. All that sort of helped facilitate, or at least make my journey to the NWA smooth and sort of a no-brainer. And for me, it's like the locker room is really great. Like, I'm around all the guys that I came up with, where it be, Tyrus EC3 or Aaron Stevens, or whoever, right? These are all guys that we've seemed to mirror each other in, where we go and what we do. And so, and a lot of the guys too, at least the ones that have been around for a while, myself, EC3, Trevor, Knox, people like that. We've all got all the sort of the bullshit out of the way. We all know where we need to be, what we need to do, how this story should be told. And so there's definitely this level of it's just a good vibe, because everyone sort of more or less gets it, you know what I mean? So I enjoy being there. Even if I wasn't going to wrestle there, I'd still enjoy being around that group of people and things like that. And I like the fact that Billy has a place where sort of the older style and the older mentality can still have a place to be and play. and the fact that a lot of us, like you say, we've been everywhere. We've been to a lot of places and learned a lot of things. And so it's kind of like a good place where guys that have had and been in a job for a while can have a place to be able to, do it probably at their highest level. And I love the place. Billy takes very good care of me. And he's obviously, I've been with them 5 years now. He obviously still needed to make sure that I was a guy that he could lean on and depend on, because obviously he knows my story, he knows my history, he knows, he was there with me at Impact. And so I definitely think there was probably a level of, okay, well, we've seen this company give him the ball and he's kicked it away. Let's not give him the ball right now. Let's just see how he goes. And so, I definitely feel like I've proved my stock and worth over the years, and I should have had to. Like, I had to be able to prove that I was someone that you can trust and rely on, and that's a no-brainer, and it sort of helped me, continue to just stay on the path and continue to prove that I can be what they want me to be. And again, the more places there are for people to wrestle, the better, And again, we're trying to give an alternative to the other things that are out there as well. Again, like I'll be sat there watching the 1986, Crockett Cup, and this is a place where that kind of wrestling can, be relevant again. So, and as far as like, I'm 30, 37, 38 now. I can't think how old I am. I think I'm 37, I think. I know that I've only got a few years left in the job. And so, for me, I'd be quite happy just spending the rest of my time at the NWA helping grow it and retire from there, and then help sort of the next lot, hopefully from the school we're opening, go there and have a place to work and wrestle too. So I'm very, very happy at the NWA. I've got nothing but good things to say about it, and it's a place that I just want to continue for it to grow and continue to get steam and momentum. And there's always growing pains, especially after COVID and things like that. So I'm excited to see where we go. Being on the CW app should be a great thing for us. So again, yeah, it's just I guess it's just slow baby steps towards growth.
It's great how much you want to give back. But if I had to ask, Thom, if you had to be selfish a little bit, if you had to think about what you wanted for yourself, is there a major goal in the NWA that you'd like to achieve still?
There is. There is, yeah. And I think that is probably, and that would just be to prove to myself that, I can be that guy. And I think that one day it will happen, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I definitely want to be world heavyweight champion, because for me it's more like a way of being able to know that I was given the ball this time and I kept it and I ran with it. And it's basically, I'll never be WWF World Heavyweight Champion or anything like that, right? But I can be the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And that to me is good enough, because that validates to me that I did the right thing. I put my head down, I got clean, I got sober, I did all the right things. I'm a good enough talent to be put in that position. I'm trusted enough. So it's kind of one of those things that, when that day happens, I go, okay, I'm good now. Like that is my WrestleMania moment.
To me, it sounds like just a wonderful redemption arc, right? It's almost like a movie, right? You've got all these hardships, all these struggles, self-imposed and otherwise, and it's like, you say you only have a few years. Who knows? I think you look great out there. So I can't tell how your body feels, but supposing you are wrapping up, right?
Once the wife tells me it's time, I'm gonna. She's already telling me to cut my hair. So.
But just the fact that if you are on the final 5 years or however many years, it's like right. To culminate that with the biggest moment of your career, that would be huge. That would be special.
I think so too. I feel that is the way that it will go. It should go that way. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of time.
And I do love that about the NWA, that it gives people that opportunity. I mean, look at Tim Storm. He struggled. he wrestled for so many years before getting that moment with the NWA. And, you know, you look at like a guy like Mike Knox and Trevor Murdoch. I won't say they were out of wrestling, but they certainly weren't in the spotlight for several years. And then they're thrust back into it. So I love that that exists.
For sure. I mean, we've just had Paul Birchall start with us, and
Yeah.
you know, that it's like a place, and a lot of guys, like you say, Paul's been out the job for many years, and all of a sudden he's like, I think I'm going to get back, because there's, you know, there's a place where as old timers that you know the job pretty well. We have a place to be able to go, you know, and a place to show that, you know, we can still go, and a place to be able to show off all the things that we've learned over the years. So it's, you know, it definitely has a special place in my heart.
And then on the opposite end, like the NWA has so many young talent too who can hopefully learn by working with you guys or just being around you guys. Like, you know, you this is the women's division, of course, but you know, you look at like Kylie Page and, you know, Pretty Empowered, and like they're probably the future of women's wrestling, you know what I mean? And like long term, and the fact that they can sit there and soak up knowledge from people like yourself and Mike and Trevor, like that's special.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I should have jumped on that, but I mean, and then and with the guys too, you know, Kerry Morton is going to be a big star. He's a star now, but he'll be a big star in the years to come. Thrill Billy too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that are going to, you know, probably go on and you know, get to WWE and do all these other sorts of things. So it definitely has both ends of the spectrum. You've got the oldies like me that are coming there for the last hurrah, and then you've got a lot of young upstart talent that will, you know, I mean, maybe they'll stay, who knows? But I mean, you know, you've got a lot of guys that are getting to break their teeth in and get exposure and get noticed off the place. So there's definitely a mix of both ends of the spectrum going on.
Last question I'd love to ask. You kind of touched on it already, but no matter how many times, if we talk again in the future, I'll ask you the same exact question to wrap up before we hit plugs. What does the future look like for Thom Latimer?
The future looks calm, stable, safe, and it looks. I'm going to continue to do exactly what I've been doing the last sort of. I've been, I think, just over 4 years sober. I'm just going to continue to do what I've been doing because that seems to have been working pretty well. You know, everything in my life is smooth. I have a great wife and dog, a good life. Very blessed, and so I'm just going to continue on the path that I've been doing, which is staying healthy, motivated, help the next crop of kids, and probably also think about, you know, the next stage of life, because that's definitely something that I'm going to have to start thinking about soon. I can't, like I say, take bumps forever. And then, you know, ultimately, I want to sooner rather than later, at least by the end of this year, be world heavyweight champion. And I feel that that's probably the way that I've been going. I feel like that is the way it's going to be. So just throwing that out there in the universe.
Best thing to do. Congratulations on your sobriety. Congratulations on the way your life turned around. And thank you as a fan for entertaining people for so long. One more time, where can people check you out?
We're on the CW app for the NWA, and then Thomas_Latimer_ on Twitter and Instagram. And then you know, come to the wrestling school, Hatchet Pro Wrestling.com, and you come learn from three of the finest.
Absolutely, guys. Again, we will have links in the description to everything so you can check it out, show some support. If you are an aspiring wrestler, you know, be sure to check that out. I'm sure they have a contact page where you can inquire more information about what the school is and everything that goes on with that. Be sure to check us out too at Armbars and Sidebar on Twitter or X, at Armbars and Sidebars on Threads and Instagram, and at Armbars and Sidebars on YouTube. Subscribe. We do try to make sure we comment on everything as long as it's nothing hateful or goofy like that. We do like to have a good conversation, but show support to us, but more importantly, show support to the people who come onto the show because they're volunteering their time to, you know, tell their story and entertain you. So please show some support. Thom, you were an incredible guest. I hope to see you back again. Thank you so much.
If you want to do the second one, Ken, we'll do it and we'll get a bit deeper into it. But thanks for your time, man. I do appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you. And until next time, guys. Later.